Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux, taking a look at race number 9 at Del Mar on Pacific Classic Saturday. It's the Grade 3 $150,000 Green Flash Handicap going 5/8 of a mile. And if you think the Classic is a competitive race, all of the graded stakes races on turf at Del Mar on Saturday are wide open, including the Green Flash. Before we take a look at the entry card, remember to check out the Labor Day sale at shop.drf.com, up to 50% off PP's picks, clock reports, the digital paper, and more of your favorite DRF products. Shop.drf.com. Here's the field for the Green Flash Handicap. It's an overflow field, 12 in the body of the race, 13 through 15 on the AE list. It's so competitive. Your morning line favorite, the number 8 Motorious, is 4-1.
You have everything in here. Obviously, you're going 5/8 on the turf, but you have a lot of speed horses. You have some deep closers. You have horses off of long layoffs that have targeted this spot. I think it kind of makes it a wide open betting event because I even think looking at some of the horses that are shorter prices on the morning line. They are horses that are coming off those layoffs. So I think it's intriguing top to bottom and a race that I'm looking forward to this weekend.
And unsurprisingly, there should be a good amount of early pace. The 2 Kid Corleones returning to turf. He comes out of the Grade 1 Bing Crosby where he was forwardly placed. I know Noble Reflection is fast. Bus Buzz is shown fast on dirt. But I have to be honest, if Fast Buck breaks, doesn't he go to the front?
You have to think off of his last effort. I know it was on the downhill, but we're talking about a sub 43 half. I think he has to be forwardly placed. Plus, he draws the inside.
He is wicked fast. Let's watch his graded stakes debut in the Daytona going down the hill on May the 27th. In the blink of an eye, he was 3 lengths clear. Then he was 5 lengths clear, and he's understandably getting tired in the final 16th of a mile. Ashley mentioned the splits that this horse had to deal with, but he's also really game to hold on and win by a neck. I like that they gave him a little bit of time since that race. And again, he's won at 5/8 in the past at Del Mar, and he's done so in on the lead, so he's quick enough to go 5/8 on up front.
I have to think so too. And I think, that is 6.5 on the downhill. We know how the downhill plays in terms of fractions, but cutting back now off of that big performance, you have to think he's got a live shot in here. And it's just interesting to watch him because he's a horse that sometimes he's needed a couple of, races off the layoff. We saw that this year, but in his last 2, I think he's looked lights out in both of those efforts, and they're both going longer.
The 2 is Kid Corleone, who's coming off a really good performance at a big price in the Bing Crosby. I like the ride that Pereira tried to give him. He was down towards the inside, and he tries to sneak on through. That's what you do at a big price horse. Try to save as much ground as possible. And listen, he was just facing better in the stretch. Horses like the Chosen Vron and Anarchist and Dr. Shivel. Kid Corleone ran really well to be 4th, and he's basically unproven on turf. He's only raced once on the surface. It was his career debut before blinkers came on, and he caught a really good field that day.
And he's only beaten by a length and a half in that race. I thought it was a good effort. Looking at him, it was just his second start since his only other try at a graded stakes level. And, he held his own relatively. And you've mentioned he just faced really nice horses. We know what Anarchist was able to do just a weekend ago. So it's curious to now see him on the turf. He's only had that one lone turf start. It was the first one in his career. So I can't read in it too much. It was an okay performance, right? He was 4th in a field of 11, but it was so early on in his career, and I just think he's a better horse now.
There are things to like about the 3. Turn On the Jets. If you believe there's going to be some hitting up front, this horse likes to sit back and finish. Plus, he loves Del Mar. He's 3 for 3 over the surface, including this win in a nice prep run last month. Here's Turn On the Jets. He's going to tip off cover at the 3/16 pole. He's going to grind down this field. I think he's racing himself back into shape. This is going to be his 3rd race off of a lengthy layoff, and he's progressed with each start thus far.
I agree with you completely. I also agree with the fact that you pointed out maybe it comes down to trip in here. We've talked about a couple speedy runners, but there's still more speed in here to come as we work our way through the field. And he's gotten that trip several times in a row now. And not that he's necessarily won all of those races, but even 2 starts back going 5.5. He finished 4th beaten by a length. Yeah, he probably needed more, but it was also his first start, as you've mentioned, off a layoff. So I think he has some upside. And Phil D'Amato's had a great meet, and he's had a great meet on the turf.
He beat 3 of these foes in that most recent allowance race. One of them is his next door neighbor in the gate on Saturday, the number 4 Silent Poet, who has tons of back class. He won the Grade 1 Highlander at Woodbine a couple of years ago. His most recent start, Didn't run great. He caught into a little bit of trouble. It was his first race for John Sadler. Now he's been with the program a little bit, and I wouldn't be surprised if he moves forward.
I think he can take a step forward. I think he did have some troubles last time out, and he's a horse that, he's been close a couple times this year and just hasn't been able to get the job done. And it's certainly been against lesser competition. You've mentioned, though, the back class is there. I still think, regardless, even though the Sadler barn is more familiar with him now, I just wonder if his best races at this sort of level, if they're a little behind him at this point.
I love the way Beer Can Man's been handled this year by Phil D'Amato and his connections. They just seem to find the right spots for this likable horse. Here's his win in the Jim McKay Turf Sprint on Preakness weekend at Pimlico, and he's very game to win this race. That's Right is a very fast horse on the lead. He chased that pace. It looked like for a second he was going to be outrun on the turn, and he just keeps on grinding to win. He came out of this effort to just miss against Turn on the Jets. You got to think he's coming into this race in good form. He likes Del Mar. He can work out a good trip.
I think he has been excellently campaigned this year, and we showed that when he got lucky, right? Because originally he had post 13, there were scratches, so he wasn't going to get hung out there necessarily and got into the field in that sense. But last time out at Del Mar, it was a good effort. We haven't seen him much. I mean, we've seen him 3 times since February of 2022, and he seems to be a horse that he's been consistent throughout his career. Yes, he's might have had some setbacks along the way, but he's gotten 296 Beyer speed figures in his last, and one that I think, in comparison to some of the horses we talked about, he might be a tad closer to the pace, but still in that spot where he's going to be in that sweet spot just off of it.
I'm a huge fan of the number 6 Lane Way. I just have a feeling this horse has been battling various minor ailments throughout his career. Here's his most recent start. When he shows up on the track, he usually gives a big performance, as he did in this race, the restricted Clocker's Corner, way back at the end of January. He traveled very comfortably throughout. He does seem like he's a bit of a downhill specialist, Ashley, and that concerns me going this sharp 5/8. He's run well at Del Mar in the past, but not at the level he's run at Santa Anita. But he's an honest horse that'll give you a good effort.
I think there's two things that I worry about. I worry about, as you've mentioned, 6.5 on the downhill. It's kind of been his go-to game. 5/8 maybe a little short, but also he's one of the horses that I mentioned. They're coming off that layoff, and you look at his races in the past. He has needed a race or two, and he's improved a little bit. But it's not like he found himself in the winner's circle right away off the layoff. We saw that last July when we didn't see him between October and July. So talent is there. He's run some really big races, but my one concern would be, can he win at the 5/8 distance? I think he can certainly get a share, but I'm not sure if the win is that practical.
A horse that's going to be part of the pace picture at the very least is the number 7, Noble Reflection. He was on the lead in the Turn on the Jets video we showed you before tiring to finish 6th. He's run well at 5.5. He's run well at 6, 6.5. Here going 5 against some other speeds, he might be up against it a little bit.
He might be. It's fun, though, to see how a horse can really put it together on the turf. He's a horse that I know he does have a dirt win under his belt, but you look at his numbers and they're day and night difference. And it seems like since he's switched barns, they've decided to strictly campaign him on the turf, and it has worked out well. I just think he's probably, to be honest, just a notch below this group.
The 8 is Motorious. He's won going 5/8 at Del Mar. He's won going down the hill at Santa Anita. He ran second last time out at Churchill in the turf sprint there on Derby weekend. He faced 3 next out winners that day. This is a horse coming into this race as the fastest horse on the page. 102 Beyer, 2 back, 101 Beyer last time out. He'll kick in the stretch.
He will kick in the stretch, and that's been, his go-to move. I do think he has the ability, as we've seen at Santa Anita on the downhill, he can be closer to it, but he can also find himself towards the back of the pack and still make some run, assuming he can get the right trip and get clear position and make up that ground in the end. But I did think that the effort at Churchill was a very strong one. You've mentioned the next out winners. Nobles was very impressive in his follow outing, and he scored an upset in this race at a big price. So the field overall of 11, I thought, was pretty loaded in the grade 2 turf sprint. So I like him in this spot. He's been okay off the layoff in the past, but I think he's going to need to pace that up, which he should get.
The 9 is Cherubic Factor, and this is a horse that's going to get the acid test, stepping into a stakes race for the first time, but he certainly deserves the opportunity, winning 3 of his last 4 races, including this second level allowance over course and distance on July the 29th. Cherubic Factor came from way off the pace that day to win, but it sounded like they were blazing early, and he had to kind of weave his way through traffic.
He did, and I think he's a horse that's getting better with age. Not only from just you look at his resume year over year, but his numbers are improving. The way that he's winning, he looks better each time physically when he's winning those races. And I thought last time out when he was cutting back, it's going to be interesting to see if going from 6.5 to 5 furlongs is going to work for him, and it did. So I understand why they're taking a shot. I understand why anyone in this race is taking a shot here, and maybe he has some upside with him. He really hasn't raced too much in his career.
Ashley, you mentioned horses coming off long layoffs in this race. One of them is the number 10 Bram, who's just really consistent when he's right. He's hit the board in his last 6 starts, including his last race, a big victory at Kentucky Downs, going 3/4 of a mile. That's a very demanding distance over that European configuration at Kentucky Downs. Bram looked good in this race. He kind of got a nice trip stalking the early pace, got out in his game to win. They were going to run him in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. He had to be scratched due to a vet issue. So now he's going to deal with this race off almost a year layoff.
You've mentioned the configuration at Kentucky Downs. It's also the quality that comes over. It doesn't matter the level of race. Those races are just so challenging to get through. And it was a career best performance for him. My question will be the distance. He's coming off the layoff as well, but 5/8 we really haven't seen from him. They've tried him at a mile. He was actually, I thought, a pretty good third in that race behind some nice horses in the Wicker. But a lot of his races have been at 6.5, 5.5. It's interesting to note, though, he can be tactical and forwardly placed. So I'm curious to see what the tactics will be from Hernandez with post 10 in this field.
I want to demand a price, though, on him because I wonder if this is sort of a means to an ends. This is the building
Right.
block to races at Santa Anita leading up to the Breeders' Cup. The 11 is Bus Buzz. He's very fast. The question is, can he translate his exceptional dirt form to the turf? He's a Calbred facing open horses, stepping up into the graded stakes ranks. His sires stay thirsty, only 8% winners with turf sprinters. The dam is a half sister to Brando the Bartender, who is a good Calbred middle distance turf horse.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions he'll have to answer. He's another, lightly raced horse in here. He's facing older horses, and the surface will be a big question. I mean, he showed a lot of speed even last time out going 7A. So I expect him, and even his time form showed right from the pace projections. He should be forwardly placed, but you never know, especially when you start to look. He does have one workout on the turf recently. I think it's fine, but I don't know what it looked like necessarily, and I don't know what that'll kind of translate into race day form.
And the 12 Paxawallop has some quality as well. He went into last year's Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf firmly stamped as the best 2-year-old turf horse in Southern California. It didn't work out that day for him in the Breeders' Cup, and then they tried dirt, and it just didn't work out at all. They're regrouping. They're coming back off a long layoff. Another situation, especially from this tough post, where you have to wonder if it's a prep.
I would think it's a prep, knowing that he really liked the mile distance. I know he's able to win at 5/8 early in his career, but I think it's a similar story. Maybe several horses in here, as we've mentioned. This is just a means to an end, and you see where you go from here, and you then decide what you're going to do next. Are you going to take these horses maybe lower competition? Are you going to stretch them out? And maybe for some of them, you're going to switch surfaces again. But I think in the terms of this horse, he wants the turf. This might be short, and he just might not be ready to perform at his best.
Rest of the field, they're entered for also eligible. Masrapido is a little bit interesting to me, but he's always cutting back in distance. He might have a little bit too much to do from a tough post. Let's take a look at our top picks for the Green Flash Handicap because you can go so many different ways. I like your idea. When in doubt, go speed. Fast Buck is very fast. He might be too fast for these.
I think he is the speed. I think, there's a lot of speed in here, which would be the one concern. But with post one, knowing the speed that he's flashing, know it's on the downhill, but he's so quick that I still wonder if he's quicker than everybody else in here. And he's only going 5/8 now. So can he take him gate to wire? I think there's a possibility. But, I see in terms of your selections, the 6 lane way, this is wide open in lane way. The class is there.
Yeah, the class is there. It'll be interesting to see what we get off of the layoff. I think with him, though, he's so kind of brittle in his career. I hate to say it, that I don't know if your waist races is preps for him. You really want to have him ready when he comes off the bench. He's your second pick. It's a fun race. Motorius is a logical contender as well. So you might want to spread near multiple race wagers. Ashley goes 1-6-8-5. I'm going 6-8-10-1 in the Green Flash. Good luck.